Good afternoon, everybody. Today's Monday, October 21st, 2024. Our goal here is to review the market generated information in a holistic fashion. We're intimately following the auctions narrative of both ES and NQ. If we have time, we'll theorize and add additional commentary towards the end. There's an uploaded recording today of the DOM. I did not have my mic on, my mic was muted, so no commentary today, just a DOM replay. All right, perfect. Let's get started. So we'll look at the weekly candles to get a better idea of where we're coming from and where we wanted to start as we begin our week. So again, our prior week's candle, we pushed out above, higher high, higher low, and we closed at the all-time highs. So again, solid performance last week for the market. We had the Monday, which was a holiday, big impulsive day, the reversal on Tuesday. We had possible start of a rejection on Wednesday, push above on Thursday, big gap up, and close much lower to get us back into that range. And then Friday was a consolidation and inside bar of the dramatic events that happened on Thursday, which was really a combination of what happened on Monday and Tuesday. So the goal for the buyers was to have a higher high and a higher low to break us out of this range, so we're not having any other inside bar. We did have our higher, we did not make a higher high, and they did make a lower low and tested the 5 SMA on the daily. The weekly for the NQ, they did push out, but they closed back into this monthly range for October. On the daily, again, we had our Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, a little bit different structure, but they too wanted to make a higher high and a higher low. Funny enough, the NQ actually accomplished their goal. So shout out to the Nasdaq for today. We'll look at the what was on the docket exactly for the day. Oops, excuse me. I'm gonna make a reference to this in a moment. But today we just had our leading indicators, which came out at 7 a.m. No real data until Wednesday, where we have the existing home sales, and then the beige book at 11 o'clock. We do have Fed speakers Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and Thursday. So there's something to be mindful of. Earnings really not too much on the Monday, but it'll pick up a little more on Tuesday, on Wednesday, definitely Wednesday because of Tesla, and then Thursday as well as like IBM, Boeing, Coca-Cola as well. So it's a lot. So this would be a little busier for sure. All right, and then we'll look at the footprint for the NQ. We can see that they had about 200 points of range, 210 to be exact. The volume was about average for the most part, maybe lower average, below average rather. And then the delta, again, you will take this with a grain of salt since the volume is a bit low. But the buyers definitely put a lot of effort in. There was a lot of sellers that were trying extremely hard, which we'll look at on the intraday basis. But the buyers really pushed effort and pushed it back up. So again, solid day for the NQ, just from a quick glance. Same situation for the what is with the sellers on for this overnight session? They're really aggressive right now. Interesting. That is really interesting right now. But we'll hold off on that. So short of a million, the minimum was 19K, and we finished around 54K. So sellers really tried today. They really couldn't they couldn't keep price lower. You can see they did try, and buyers really had to put in some effort to get it off the ground, but not too much. Pushed up above, V pockets at the middle. About a normal day profile for both sides. And then looking at the sector tracker, we can see that the S&P 500 finished about 20 basis points negative. Sorry, I'm looking at their price to see what's kind of going on here. That's interesting to see. But the communication sector, all the way down to real estate, I mean, everyone was red. The only one green was technology. So that's interesting. Nvidia really put the market on its back today. So I just thought that was kind of funny, to be honest. We have nothing that really stood out too much. Healthcare has been pretty weak from what we've been seeing, even on the past 5 days. they're right behind energy as some of the worst performers. And even financials finally took a break today, less than 1%, but everyone just had a chill day for the most part. Nothing crazy, especially with earnings coming up for discretionary. So, you want to take that with a grain of salt. Um, so, interesting day. All right, so we'll pick up at the technology. Excuse me, we'll pick up the S&P 500. This composite goes back to April. This is the monthly composite, and then we have the weekly. And from what we can see the past week, this was the prior week. So again, we started today's session at the top of the value area high for for last week's price action, and we tested all the way lower to more of like this ledge down here. You can see a lot of time was spent down here, so a lot of people was able to maybe reposition, maybe close their trade or what have you, then immediately push back up and closed above the VPOC and near the value area high for the day. So again, we pushed lower, and then we're starting to head back up. Looks like we're gravitating back to balance, or at least just where this majority volume was taken, near the 5,900 level. So really not too much to look at there. No singles or anything crazy there. Actually, let me scoot back for the Nasdaq. Again, we tested a little lower, and then we push back up. If you've been following, we've been talking a lot about these 20K 400 zone, and if the more volume they can build above this area, this is extremely bullish because this is their line in the sand for the bears. So again, they were able to push below and even push above the value area high um, for the month and last week as well. So again, solid job for the buyers on the NQ. We looked at the sector tracker. Let's head to the intraday. So again, it's just like a quick glimpse from 138-minute candle. I think it's really interesting to see how the NASDAQ pushed all the way down to this point here, but did not make a lower low, and then immediately pushed back up. So again, there's a lack of willing to trade at these lower prices. Sellers did try today, but buyers just said fuck it and ate it all up. And we'll take a look at the ES. Really not the case here. They pushed down and they pushed back up as well. But they broke a lot of structure here, but really not too much damage. We just got back to this point here. This is around again, a lot of time was spent here from last week. So just a consolidation range, really nothing too special there. Going back to the S&P 500, really pushed down, expecting a possible trend day. Of course not, no trend days here. And we push back up to the middle of the range. So, I mean, this would just be considered balance. Not necessarily a bear flag, given that they broke above this 50 and really the 62% and really pushed above. Sellers just absolutely tried, especially that second bar there, and then just really had to give up and kind of fluttered above. No real urgency to push lower when they had the opportunity. Essentially the same thing for the NQ, except it was much more aggressive, pushing up to a degree. All right, we will look at the intraday on the 3 minutes. All right, so we'll start off with the S&P 500 just for some context. Again, we're not going to go into all this session here, but again, you've been following along. Again, this was Friday. We had the overnight drift on Thursday, push a little lower, and push back up into that midpoint of that range, tested down a little lower, and then finished above the prior day's high, at least on Friday. So again, somewhat of a strong showing, but this was all relative to that possible bear flag from what we were seeing on Thursday, which is really a follow-up from Tuesday, like we talked about. As we finished Friday, we gapped up, or we opened higher rather on the Sunday, and then drifted down about 30 or so points. But we ended up pushing back into about the lower third of that range, where we opened our session. Again, the S&P 500 was much weaker compared to the Nasdaq. So a bit of a open auction from what we can see. Actually, we'll just do it this way. Sorry, this was just like a really tight range, so it was just kind of ugly. But this was like 7 points of range, so it really just pushed up, just went down, pushed up, and went back down. So a bit of an open auction with a upward skew. We pushed up again, failed to get to that overnight high, and then really just catapulted down, just trend lower below this five smoothing average, all the way down into about 2 hours into the market, and then they engulfed it, pushed down, confirmed it, and then really just trended up for the rest of the day. No real pullbacks until the overnight. Once they reclaimed the VWAPs, they used the overnight low as some support. So again, they looked in real time. This was much weaker for sure, and you see they closed below their DGPs right at their initial balance low. So it really wasn't the case too much for the Nasdaq. Again, this is Friday, which they had a lot more of a tighter range. So the fact that they broke that range, though they didn't break the overnight low from Thursday night, Friday's overnight low. They did get extremely close, but they too pushed back up into the open to about that lower third portion of it. And as we pushed up, this was more of an open drive, no real trading below the open. Open drive higher, push through for this B bracket to claim this overnight high. They had to fight a little bit for it. Impulse through, indecision, and then just engulf back down the same time as the S&P 500 was filling. And then they too had a trend down lower their five smoothing average, reclaim the five smoothing average down here, a small little pullback, and then really just trend day for the rest of the day. They close above their initial balance high. So again, much of a stronger showing for the NQ. I thought it was interesting to mention the way the way they pierced the overnight high and had an impulse through, and then a bit of an indecision. Definitely an opportunity for you to get in here, with a tighter stop, or even when they reclaimed here with a 20 point or so stop near those highs, especially given that ES was extremely weak at the time. I also believe it was interesting that as they reclaimed down here, they made their new low for the S&P 500 and then the new low for the NQ. So these look like this impulse will be the same here, but clearly they're not. It's a little bit of a time difference there. ES made their low, where this arrow is pointing. This was at 8:30. The 8:30 candle for the Nasdaq is actually here. So, not only are you seeing that the NASDAQ is much stronger for the open drive and, definitely have a more of urgency to buy, the fact that they were able to, hold their lows to a degree. And once they did break their lows, really just push back up. They kind of led the S&P 500 here. So 2 bars to reclaim. You see the S&P 500 took about 3 bars and then they had their impulse through. But my point is that as the S&P 500 had this big impulsive candle here, this impulse candle, this was at 8:39, right? So that was at 8:39. This 8:39 candle is here as well. So prior to that breakout candle, you can see that the Nasdaq pushed through and coiled a bit. That's a bit of a tough trade to see if, do you really want to get into this as you're having like an open drive? Is that something that you would really want to reverse and take the other side of that? That would be a little tough. You know what I mean? On the S&P 500, maybe not so much given their weakness, but given the Nasdaq, this definitely makes sense for us in real time. If you were late on that impulse move, you definitely had an opportunity on this bit of a pullback there, or even at that close, given that the range was in, I think it was like 20 or so points, right? That's at 410. This close is at 88. So I mean, it's 22 points. Yeah, so about 22 points of risk if you're sloppy, and that would be targeting somewhere up here. So I mean that's definitely your, it's almost a 3 to 1. So again, even getting in here late, you had an opportunity, or if you want to possibly take a shot, you can have your getting your entry candle before that impulse candle, either to stop a little low here, or just a low altogether. That'll put you at like 25 points of risk. Same idea, but just a thought from my own personal notes. But all right, we're gonna go ahead and really cut it there. The buyers did an okay job for the S&P 500. I really don't care for the way that they closed um, below the IB low. But again, it was decent overall. Say what you will about that. Definitely solid job for the Nasdaq 100%. Um, they closed above their IB high. They did not make a new high once this issue over here, but overall, very solid to not break the prior day's low and create a higher low and a higher high as well. So maybe like a good 7 or 8 for the Nasdaq, and maybe like a 5 or 6 for the S&P 500. All right, we'll go ahead and stop it there. There's no new execution, excuse me, not execution. There's no new area of interest for us to draw. I think the overnight session is going to be really important. This definitely may be a sign of weakness for the S&P 500. We'll see if this is going to be any kind of continuation to the downside, but definitely poor showing for the for breadth, and even for the technology. The fact that the only one that was really, putting in work was NVIDIA. I mean, literally in this whole XLK, it's 69 companies in here. The ones over, there was no one else over 1.5%. Even only a handful made it to 1% as a whole. So I'm not sure exactly what was going on today, but today seemed like a risk off kind of day. But all right, I'm out. Thanks for joining.